Greetings, everyone, and welcome to my channel, All That Is. I'm so glad to have you here today. I'm here with a very special guest, Shekinah Grace. We met authentically through the chat forums, if you will, on the channel Indigo Angel on YouTube. And so we've been chatting a couple of times, and we discovered a lot of commonalities between us. And so we came together and we said, why not, just have a chat on YouTube and share it with the public and see where this goes, because we're all being called to contribute in our own special ways, if you will. And so it's great to have this community of people that see things the way we all do, and have that common thread, if you will, between us. So welcome, Shekinah, to this channel.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really, really excited.
Great. So I'd like to do like a sort of a round robin, if you will, just to sort of give the audience a flavor of what Shekinah is all about. And then we can sort of dive into what your sort of your ascension journey has been, and what are the services that you offer, and what is it that brings joy into your life. So yeah, wherever you want to start, if you want to talk a little bit about your background and how it is that you came to be on this ascension journey, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say my biggest awakening happened when I was 20 years old. There was a catalytic traumatic event that happened in my family that just um, you know, it sounds cliche, but the feeling was like I was blind, but now I see. Like it almost felt like it happened overnight. So yeah, my perspective shift on the world completely changed within a matter of almost like 24 hours. And I experienced like huge waves of compassion, flood my being and my interactions. And I was suddenly able to, you know, even more focus on like that invincible divine light of everyone. Um, and it was probably through a channel of compassion. And so that compassionate, like empathetic response to every interaction was I was just able to understand the source of any suffering or any behavior, any action that people were taking or words that they were saying. I was just really able to feel what was beneath the surface of what was kind of a normalized perception reality. So because of my ability to feel the emotional field, you know, the frequency that was beneath, not always a match to what people were saying, allowed me to um, just perceive the oneness and perceive that we all are divine somehow. And the event that happened was my brother committed suicide in 2002. So that was the big moment or trauma. And suddenly I really recognized in that moment too, like the conditioning of the matrix. Because even losing him, I became aware of my reaction to that event felt very contrived. It felt very programmed. Like you do this when someone dies, you behave in this way, you emote in this way, because we see that on movies, right? So there was a part of me that was like witnessing the inauthenticity of how our society deals with death and the programming of that, like the drama of it. I became aware of reincarnation cycles and karma, and that wasn't really a part of my family background growing up. I was baptized Catholic. And I mean, if we go before this event, there were signs and things that occurred in my life that looking back really showed me how aligned and attuned I was to Christ consciousness, because I openly questioned things about my church in junior high and into high school. I attended more than one faith or denomination or church in my community, and that was on my own volition and kind of self-led or self-motivated. So there were things beforehand that I was always kind of on this trajectory or path of like aligning myself with spirit, and had very, very profound experiences with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. But it was really this event. I was kind of just a kid going along, with the partying and the drinking and the culture. Isn't that sad? The culture that raised me. But after losing my brother, I thought, like, this isn't normal. Even the response to it being like, oh, people just do that. People just kill themselves. Like, oh, well, like, there was a lot of grief and holding on and distortions within the process of grief that I could witness and see. But there wasn't really a deep investigation. Like, what is wrong? What is wrong that someone would want to escape that way, or that it didn't feel like they had any other choice or the resources or the connection to spirit and the land and nature and God to want to access that feeling of being fully alive and vibrant in life, which I kind of always felt like this isn't it. This can't be what God creator, had in mind for his children. So that was the catalyst for me. And then there's a whole host of, it's a long, it would take up our entire interview maybe to talk about all of the initiations and all of the things that I moved through from that point. Maybe I could write a book about it. It's very quite systematic in a way. It almost feels like mystery school level. There was an order to things in hindsight. I can really see like the root chakra clearing and then moving into this, like it was, but life was orchestrating that. And I was just responding, in the best way that I could. Even the decisions that I would have potentially regretted felt like initiations, like I had to move through that to get the contrast, to understand the polarity, which helps me to work with clients in a way that's more neutral. Like I needed to really experience the hell realms on the planet in order to be able to speak to them and not fear them, and be someone who really moved through it. Like, yeah. So
Wow, that's a lot. But thank you for sharing. That's a very, very personal story, and I'm sorry for your loss. That's a very close relative to have lost, right? But I feel that there is a reason, and I don't know if you've come to that understanding or that alignment yet, but on a soul level, when beings come here for an incarnation, it's pre-planned how they will exit, if you will, from here. And so whether it's to, commit suicide, as in the case of your brother, there are like, the way I look at it is like you have flag posts along the way to exit this matrix, if you will, right? And so as you come to that first flag post, if you will, if your soul is feeling like it's accomplished what it came here to do, then it will take that opportunity to exit. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I've really explored the different possible reasons for it, because I personally have regressed or understood that, there was a point here about 5 years ago when I was talking with Green Tara, and I had an overwhelming sense of wanting to exit. And it was just when COVID was, all the shenanigans were happening with that. And I said, like, how many times have I done that? Because of sovereignty, because it was like, she said too many times to count, that I've taken my own life in previous incarnations, and that not all of them were as like to escape and like part of the looping in this time matrix, and some of them were based on sovereignty. So not wanting that bodily autonomy to be breached, or not wanting to be forced to do something against my sovereign divine ability to decide for myself who's going to how my energy is going to interact with other beings. So there's kind of two ways, two categories. Like you said, sometimes it's built into the contract. And I would say there was a bit of both that took place, because there's consequences to everything. And so I think I got it right away. Like, even though I was playing this, like, what felt like an inauthentic grieving process, because I didn't have anyone who had the higher knowledge of how to move through that, or even to discuss the things that were coming online for me. I knew right away why it happened. And that's what woke me up to this concept, this idea of like karma and reincarnation and soul contracts. So I knew exactly why it happened. And I had many realizations in the first few years of getting that like full body download of like that my brother actually did it for myself, among other people, but it was for my awakening so that I could get onto my path. And at the same time, I became aware of the fragmentation that took place with such a violent death. And so there were soul fragments that were left and trapped sort of here, which, I don't really know if I would call it good or bad. It just was what it was. And I think part of what my role was to help facilitate to heal that soul fragmentation, because of my awareness and my ability to see the different ways that my brother was still attached to that incarnation, and how it was holding him back a little bit from fully returning to source, if you will. So there's this
Yeah,
multidimensional.
no, I get it. And
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that as well, because you have obviously put a lot of thought into this, and worked on yourself and this journey that you've had. And it's totally coming from an evolved perspective of your soul, if you will. And so that's truly honorable from my perspective, right? That you have that ability to look at it from that sort of bird's eye view, if you will, right?
Mhm.
And so just going back to what you said earlier and dealing with these situations from an emotional frequency perspective, if you will,
Mhm.
would you say that you were like, did that come from an early age, where you sort of sense things within people from an emotional level, or was this something that sort of catalyzed during this event, if you will? Were there hints along the way that you had these sensitivities?
Um, in the moment of my childhood, like when I look at just like interactions with friends and at high school and blah blah blah, like I don't know if I was fully conscious of that, but I did have experiences where I would be in my room alone, and the room would kind of spin like a vortex. It was like time would speed up or slow down. It felt like, how on a VHS cassette, like a rewind or fast forward. I would have those moments just by myself. And, and it actually developed a little bit of an OCD in me when I was interacting in a public, like social setting. I felt like I couldn't be fully present in that frequency. I couldn't really relate to the 3D activities that were going on without feelings, um, yeah,
Grounded or connected?
yeah, grounded or connected. And then the other thing that there was a thing in me, there was something in me that was like, I don't like this culture. I don't know how to fit into the culture of like hockey and drinking and, industrial farming. There was something inorganic about it that I just could not integrate well with. And so I think that's where I started to just be a little bit more in that like things were happening around me kind of in the slow motion, fast motion, like time, like I was aware of this like time around me happening, and I just didn't know where I could jive or go into that. So I felt alone, even though I was surrounded by, I had a huge extended family and friends. I felt quite alone. And then just this natural impulse, like none of my other peers wanted to go to church twice every Sunday, or like I was quite passionate about, like in my spare time I was listening to like gospel music and kind of worship music towards Yeshua. And um I even asked my mom if I could move away in grade 10 to study dance, because I just felt like I wanted to be more challenged in on a mastery level, and through the arts. And yeah, so it was interesting. But I mean, it's all good. There's parts about, I grew up on a farm, and so I liked the feeling and the freedom of being on the farm, but still there was something inorganic about the land there. I don't think it was always that way, but it definitely, I think maybe even around the time I was born, it started to become more inorganic.
So this was in Saskatoon, right?
This was south of Saskatoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yay, Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I craved so much to be in like more of a pristine natural environment. And we're in BC now in the
Yeah.
mountains.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, what was your family life like? I know you talked a little bit about it, but did you feel that you could talk to your parents about what you were seeing, what you were experiencing, or perhaps with your brother? Were you able to communicate with them that didn't fit in, or was that something that was totally off?
Not
Like, oh,
really.
okay,
Yeah, I didn't even, like, the feeling was there, but I didn't really have articulation. My throat chakra wasn't open in as a child. It was actually went up to about 5 years old, but the feedback all of my teachers gave my parents at parent teacher interviews was that I talked too much. So I think that in hindsight did something to me in my like junior high, like high school years, where I just didn't really express as much what was just happening in the present moment. And because of the constant feeling like I had to deny and reject the part of me that was spiritual, you know, I think all that denial and self denial and self rejection, it just tossed me into like doing what my friends did, and I didn't think much about it. I just thought I was just living that life. A lot of this is like picking out things in my later years to understand how Mother Mary, how my higher self, how Yeshua were constantly sort of just guiding and mentoring my human awareness without me fully being conscious of that process.
about that. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how that came to be in your reality? Because you did mention that you sort of drew this difference, if you will, from what Christianity was all about to the Christed consciousness. And I want to make that clear to our audience, right? Because there is a difference in how perhaps Christianity portrays Yeshua and Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary. And I found this in my own heart and in my own progress. Um, there's that inauthentic way, if you will, that they present these beings, right? And so I just want to know if you felt that as well in your sort of practice of going to church and pursuing religion, if you will. How
Yeah.
did you come to discern those two, that difference, if you will, from that true Christed consciousness as it relates to these beings to what perhaps religion meant to you?
Yeah. So in my youth, it was all like clairsentience and claircognizance. It was just like vibrational feeling, like a contraction in my musculature of towards some of the rituals and practices and ways, expected ways of showing up there, and just a knowing. So for example, there was one time where I had a fight with my mom in the church lobby during a time of confession, and I just said, like, I just don't believe that I have to confess my sins to a strange man in a private room, that I can talk directly to God. And if God is all knowing, like, he already knows my conscience, he already understands in what ways I'm suffering from any decisions that I made that went against myself. Like, there was just sort of, it didn't, all of that verbiage didn't come at the time, but there was a resistance and a knowing that I have my own direct connection to God, that I don't need like a middleman or an intermediary, for that connection. So that's one example. There is another example of just like almost like what felt to me, and maybe it wasn't true for everyone in the congregation. Some people are really feeling and speaking the words and feeling something. So I'm not projecting that everyone in the church was under like hypnosis or some kind of sleep, just parroting. Like, if that was just like parroting these words like zombies kind of. So I know that's not the case for everyone there, but there was just something about the overall setup of things and sort of this speaking blindly to certain commands, which remind me, because that comes to your module 1 in your course that I'm taking right now. But like that the spoken words they didn't make any sense to me. And one that really stood out was there's a part in the I don't even know what it's called, but in the church service where we say, I'm not worthy to receive you. Right? So there was just like this repetition of unworthiness. And like, I could really feel the self-hatred programming, because that was my experience as a kid, like, or into my high school years, was like a lot of the self-hatred program. And I would reflect on that in the church, because I could hear the words like sinner and unworthiness. And so it was more like the frequency, the way the words were strung together and woven together really felt off to me. But what I did love about going to church was there's this big round stained glass window of Jesus with the Sacred Heart flame and all of the light codes in that stained glass window. And I would just stare at that, and I would just stare at the Sacred Heart. And I have always loved that word, Sacred Heart, even before like I just always used it, even before I really knew what it meant on a metaphysical or ascension level. And so I feel
Can I just pause you there for a second?
yes.
Hold your thought. Hold your thought.
Okay.
Not a lot of people make that connection to the Sacred Heart, and I'm so glad you pointed that out, because it is the heart chakra, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Yeshua was showing that to us. I know a lot of people don't make that connection, but it is the heart chakra. He's telling you to come from that heart chakra, not from your physical heart.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Please go on. Go ahead.
Oh, I got goosebumps. Yeah, I just like, yeah. Anyway, so your question was like, how did I know the difference? Like I said, I think it was more that feeling sense and a knowing sense in my youth. But then because of my nature to want to deep dive, I really like to understand things on the most levels possible. So I like to descend deep into the root and like into the systems that are at play in the lower densities, and then I like to explore the ascension of moving out of those densities. And I just really like the thoroughness of diving into things that are like calling my attention and asking why am I so resonant and so aligned with this particular thing. And sometimes it's not even, sometimes it's so-called a thing that's not serving me, but I still approach it in the same way because I want to understand why I have a resonance to that. And I feel like that's how I transmute and transcend the things that do not serve me as well. So I do have a natural signature, so to speak, of like really deeply looking at things, like almost like a obsessive nature to really go in and even merge with whatever it is, like merge with the consciousness of what comes across into my field, and then and then come back out with that like wisdom, integrated wisdom and bird's eye view of like the bigger picture.
So how did Yeshua and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary sort of manifest, if you will, into your reality? How did that come about, and how did they show up in your life?
Hmm. Well, Yeshua in particular, the memory that's coming to mind was I was going to the Protestant church, just to experience something different than the Catholic Church, and it was their worship songs that just moved me to tears, and it was like happy tears. Like that connection felt so cleansing for my soul. And so there was something about the way that they sang in worship too that was different from the Catholic Church that made me realize how much I loved Yeshua and how much of a connection I had to Yeshua. So that's one way. Um, just having a very visceral emotional experience to reconnecting with him on that like devotional level, heart level, I would say. It didn't feel like a worship, but it just felt like home in my heart, and like it just felt so good. It just felt like love. And and then later on, I've always loved Mother Mary, but honestly, and I would also, besides that stained glass window, I always felt drawn to the statue of Mother Mary in the Catholic Church too. So I would just kind of look at her, and there was so this just was a connection, but it didn't really come fully online in terms of like feeling her as an ascended master guide in my field until I met my husband in 2017. And later in hindsight, like this was about maybe 3 years later, Mother Mary told me that for people seeking their divine counterpart, she's like a matchmaker. And so she came in um, to help to commune with my higher self and really help me to trust the connection, because on an egoic level, I had a lot of resistance to the growth and the level of mature spiritual maturity and emotional maturity that it was going to require of me to like really fully step into my Christed path. So and the way she started showing up was I was seeing her everywhere. So in my ego and in my anger and in all my woundedness that Robert like brought to the surface, I thought I was doing well on my own, but having that mirror and having that like that person come in, just to trigger a lot of the rest of the wounding and purification that needed to take place around my relationship with men, basically. And, this idea of what it means to be in a partnership, to really step out of the conditioning, the programming of like romantic relationships and step into that higher divine love union. I was really fighting it. Like I was really struggling with a lot of anger, a lot of rage. My husband is a shamanic seer, so he sees like spirit animals and guides and connects with the ancestors and different things. And he said that I had porcupine spikes. So, and I could feel it. Like he couldn't even walk behind me, like without me knowing, without me going like this, like just like tightening up, because I had a lot of terrible relationships
Yeah,
that
that was going to be my next question. Did you have a past history of bad relationships until you met? So Robert is your husband.
Robert's my husband. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So it comes from a past of not so good relationships. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, which is part of that, program that I had, like the distortions that you receive through media, basically. And because the reality is our parents don't raise us. They sign a birth certificate we belong to the system, and then we get thrown into the system as early as 5 years old. And so the system raises you, the culture of the environment raises you, strangers even participate in raising you and instilling certain inner foundations that later we have to really deconstruct and understand the distortions in that field. um, so I think a lot of parents don't recognize that. But anyways, so this program of thinking that I had to do everything that went against my body, or that I went against my feeling. I had to deny myself that, because that's what it meant to be in a romantic relationship. So there's so much trauma really in my cells, in my whole body, that it was hard for me just to relax into the true field of love, you know, and shift from self-hatred to self-love. And Mother Mary was just showing up everywhere. On a drive, there would be a statue. There would, where we would land, there would be like, there was just so much. She was just showing up. She was like bombarding my field, and it was my higher self that was like, trust this. I could feel the difference between my higher self, Mother Mary's presence, and then the part of me that would have run away otherwise, probably, or not trusted the path or the process. And it took a good couple of years. So he had amazing patience. And he was the first person in my life who really offered me what I feel is like a true divine masculine trait, which is like that witness state, the compassionate witness that doesn't really try and interfere or change you. He didn't try to fix the moments of deep shadow work and ugliness. He would just let me be, which even triggered my ego even more, because I was so used to that codependency, right? So he was really frustrating for my ego in the first couple of years. So that's when Mother Mary really started coming more forward. And then I started working with her more in a mentorship capacity, and offered, Mother Mary retreat. And I was just so glad to start to be able to talk about her in a way that was authentic for me and my relationship with her, rather than fearing that I was wrong to speak about her in certain ways, or even that I had a right to have a relationship with her in that way, based on such a fear-based religion, or, that where Mary, even my experience of Mary was so different than how she's presented in the church. So.
Wow, there's so many layers and so many questions popped up when you were just going through all of that. It's so beautiful. I love your story. And it just highlights a lot of things that we have in common. It's like the background that I had with the church and all of those energies that sort of, like you said, it was like a resistance in your body, and to knowing that this was not correct, and that in between individual or person, if you will, that was trying to portray religion to you. To me now, upon reflection, it sort of gives me that feeling, if you will, of repeated trauma, right, from the Christ perspective, right? It's as if each time this being is brought up in that communion sense, right? It's like reliving that trauma and keeping that energy anchored here in this third dimension. Do you know what I mean? It's like, every service, every mass, if you will, it's bringing up that crucifixion wound, right,
Yes.
of Christ. And so to me, that's like a trauma that's being relived every single time it's mentioned in the church. And when I look at it from Yeshua's perspective, he's trying to heal from that trauma that he experienced here on the third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And what this is doing is it's not allowing him to relieve himself, if you will, of that burden. It's like being re-traumatized and anchored here again and again and again by all the believers in this particular trauma, right, that he experienced. And I don't want to belittle what he went through in any way, because he had a mission, and he wanted to expose the let's say, the extremity of what these beings that suppressed him could do, right, to his physical body and to his mental body, in terms of suppressing his beliefs in the creator, or in the almighty, or whatever you want to call that energy, which is God, right, to many people. So to me, that trauma, if you will, is being re re um, yeah, it seems to me like a program, if you will, that's being brought back and brought back and brought back. And so it's not allowing this being to heal from that trauma. To me, that's
Yeah.
a very sad situation, right? Because um, that is based on how this being can evolve from this third dimensional experience, or that lifetime that he had. And when we think about it, it was a very expanded, it was a very large um, incarnation, or life purpose that he took on, to show the world that message of peace, that message of love, and the simplicity within which you can connect to all that is, or the Almighty, right? And so he had that very simple message, but the oppressors at that time brought about such a great trauma on his body and his existence, that they have now, in their belief system, if you will, reprogrammed it and reprogrammed it and reprogrammed it to be something else, right? And from my personal experience with Yeshua, the first thing that he told me is that I don't want to be worshipped. I don't want you to fall on your knees and beg for, favors, or for me to come into your life and do certain things. I am just like you. I am, and you are just like me. You are here on this earth plane to have that experience within that, the spark of the creator that's within you. And it was the same thing for me. I was on a different mission, if you will. And so we're all having that experience. It's just that he had a very different version, if you will, of that experience. Do you see that? Do you see where I'm coming from in terms of, how the I guess his Christed wounds are being brought in and re-traumatized, right?
Yeah, and I haven't too often thought about it from from his perspective. But imagine, he is a being, he's a soul, And so that would be a heavy, heavy burden, um, to have all of this thrown at him when that was not his. In my feeling, he was here to model, how the resurrection and the transfiguration, and to embody fifth dimensional consciousness, which is that unconditional divine love field, and the sacred heart activation, that the way is through the heart, that the Stargate even. So there was like, and to, that truth, um, and truth frequency, because he was calling out a lot of the corruption, right, of the Roman Empire, and a lot of the brutality. And because of the times that he was in, I mean, his crucifixion correlated to the brutality of the times, but that was not the focus. That was just reflective of the Roman Empire's consciousness. And so by having images, and so much focus on the crucifixion, is just fortifying the Roman Empire's brutality, the Roman Empire's violence, their way of punishing anyone who decides to live from their heart and be in the truth frequency. So,
But see, that's what lives on, right? It's like the perpetrators and their message, if you will, or their version of events is what lives on, right? And is sort of reflected in the belief system, if you will, and is brought up repeatedly. His pure message is somehow lost in all of the other things that are brought forward in in religion, if you will, right, and the way it's constructed, right? and in the way the services are constructed, right? They don't necessarily harp on the true message of Yeshua and what he was bringing, or Jesus in this case, right?
Mhm. And a lot of it's hard to understand. And, pure truth is just direct and clear and simple. The heart, when we can really hear the messages of our own heart, it's like one word or a simple sentence. Like it's so clear, it's so direct. And so all of this, like, whoa, like people don't even know what they're saying. Yeah, I definitely can see that for sure. And also, to speak to the same, um, segue in the same light, the crucifixion focus is very self-sacrificing. Like, focuses on like this self-sacrificial or martyrdom consciousness, which is a like a frequency shield in and of itself, right? That we have to breach the sovereignty of ourselves, you know, to follow, you know, the false message, of what Christ was saying. Like there's this idea that we have to punish ourselves in order to be worthy of receiving God's love, or we have to suffer, like brutally suffer in order to have redemption or the possibility of ascension, or, even being received or embraced by Holy Mother, Father God. So it's very, yeah, it's very just brutal. And I don't believe that our prime creator source, Mother, Father, God source, wanted us to punish ourselves, wanted us to suffer, like repeatedly suffer, or to even harm our bodies. You know, I just don't see that. And I never have really aligned with that. And I fell into, the sea of the masses, like we all have at some point or another, and actually move through the process, and then the consciousness, like the awakening of understanding how much we brutalize our bodies, how much we poison our bodies, and how much the current system or reality actually promotes that. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, yes, it's all true. Um, I just wanted to segue into sort of just mentioning my book. I've written a book with Yeshua, from his perspective, which is called "The Voice of an Angel," and so it's like a memoir of his experience, a firsthand experience of what he had as a light. First of all, being birthed as a light being, and then his incarnation on the earth as Jesus, and then going through that transformation, if you will, from a physical body to a light body, and how he experienced that in his body and in his being, and then the whole ascension process back into the light, and then that expanded vision, if you will, of what he experienced right after he ascended, and then the alignment of his soul with Mary Magdalene after the ascension, and how they sort of continued with their work after the ascension process, and how they
Mhm.
still continue to work with the earth plane at this time, as light beings, as ascended masters. So yeah, this book is available on my website. It's called The Voice of an Angel. Oh, it's flipped. Let me see if I can flip my camera around. Hopefully we don't get disconnected. Sometimes technology is a great thing, but sometimes it's not, hey?
Yeah. I've always felt like, um, what is the word, like frustrated with the technology that we have, because in my soul memory, I feel like, I've learned and studied how to project things with my mind. I've, and like, so it feels like cumbersome compared to what I feel was possible for us.
Yeah, so hopefully that's better.
Yeah, that's great. I want,
Okay.
I'd love to read that. Yeah, it sounds amazing. And so I have a question for you. What you said that did Yeshua or was Mary Magdalene already an ascended master on the planet? Was Yeshua moving through the transfiguration and ascension process to kind of get in harmony and alignment with Mary Magdalene, or were they doing this at the same time, or what's your perspective on that?
So, according to the book, and just from my communications with them over the last, I would say perhaps year or two, um, they met as souls here during that incarnation, if you will, of Jesus. Now, Mother Mary, she sort of knew what the plan was, if you will, for these two souls and the potentials of them meeting and fulfilling their vision, if you will, and their soul's path. And so it's as if she was like in the background, like moving and shaking and bringing all of these things into alignment, right? And so she was aware not only on the physical level, but from her higher perspective level that this was bound to happen. And so, yeah, so Mary Magdalene had this mission, if you will, that was already an ascended master. And so she came from this mystery school or mystery background that's connected to Mother Mary and other Sophia dragon lineage, if you will. So she comes from that school of thought and from that background. So there's this very strong divine feminine aspect of her that she came with before her ascension or descension, if you will, or her incarnation to the earth plane as Mary Magdalene. And so when she came into the lives, if you will, of Mother Mary and Yeshua upon the earth plane in the physical, she instantly was attracted to the energy of Mother Mary because they came from that same lineage, right? As the Sophia dragon energy, if you will. And so I'm not sure if they had those intimate conversations and finally realized, or brought that to fruition, and sort of came to the realization that this is what or who they were. But that's my understanding of Mary Magdalene's background and Mother Mary's background and how they came to be. And then the ascension of Mary Magdalene was, in a way, it was an enhanced experience, if you will, of her previous experiences as a light being, as a light worker. And so this physical experience enhanced her energy, her soul, her evolution as a physical being and having that experience. And so yes, it would be considered as being an ascended master because she then achieved that evolution, if you will, from the physical into being a light worker or a light being again. And so to me, that's like having a title, right, if you will, of having done that, achieved that experience of ascending from the physical into the light in that present sovereign sort of energy, right? Knowing that this is what's happening to you and being aware of it on all levels of your soul and that you're embracing it in alignment with your soul. To me, that's what being that ascended master frequency, if you will, is, because Yeshua, when he was here on the earth plane, he went through all of those initiations, if you will, of gaining a daily practice in his life of, yoga, meditation, meeting all of the higher beings that he knew that were living on the earth plane at that time. And this was something that he had planned for his incarnation, to meet all of these higher beings that were present on the earth at that time. And so you see, he went off to India and he went off to all of these places in order to meet these beings and to gain their knowledge and understanding of what it was like to live within the third dimensional experience or within the physical energy upon this earth plane, right? And so all of that was part of his predetermined plan, if you will, to have that experience on the earth plane. I went off on a tangent there. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think what I I gather from your sharing is that they were both high level beings before they even, you know, came to Earth. And then, but they also, because of the density, they also had to kind of move through the rigorous kind of training process to raise the vibration of their physical vessel to into the light, you know, to ascend into the light body, um,
Yes, that is true. Yeah,
in
that
their
is true.
embodiment, or fully integrate their soul's light into their
Yeah,
physical vessel.
because Yeshua, when he arrived here, he didn't for a while have those impressions in his physical body that he was meant to be on this path, right?
Okay.
It came into his reality, I think, in his early teens, right?
Okay.
Because he was like living like any other 3D child, right? You know, creating like, I think this is a sort of a summary of his own words. He was like creating havoc in the neighborhood, like stoning people. And at those days, right, you know,
Yeah.
you do mischief, right? You throw
Really
stones at people and you know, you
sounds like
tease.
Krishna.
Yeah,
Saying
you tease girls and you tease women. And he mentioned it in the book, like he teased Mary Magdalene when he was with this group of his peers, if you will, right?
yeah.
And so when she actually came to his place to visit with Mother Mary, at the time they met because they were both seamstresses together, Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. And so Mary Magdalene came to visit Mother Mary on some project that they were working with together. And so here's this mischief maker coming back home to finally confront this person that he had been making fun of with his friends, you know. But now when he's like, you know, staring at her one on one, he was completely shattered. He says in the book that he just was dumbstruck. He didn't know how to confront her energy because he was, you know, he was by himself and he didn't have the strength that he had when he was with his friends to perhaps repeat the, you know, the fun that he was having, right? And so it's a very how do I say this, it's a very normal sort of life that he had, right? And then it progressed from there, you know. And it progressed from Mother Mary and Yeshua, or Jesus, having this a vision, if you will, one day at their kitchen table, that it was like that was the elixir, if you will, or the starting point of their mission together. And it's almost like you know, their higher self and I guess their own guidance saying, okay, this is when you need to like start your journey together. So that's when everything sort of came together, and then they brought Mary Magdalene into their sort of conspiracy, if you will, and then they started to plan and figure out how they would move forward with their own way of presenting um, themselves and their mission and their message to the population.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love that story. I really want to get your book and read your book. I think
Yeah, it goes into a lot of different things, you know, and it's quite fascinating when you hear of it from that first person account, right, of what truly happened.
and it feels so
It's a very
pure.
humbling, sorry?
Feels very pure.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very humbling sort of experience to go through that, right? And to hear it coming directly from this being, right? So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I thoroughly enjoyed writing it. It was it was meant to happen. And again, even writing of this book, it sort of came to me many years ago, and I didn't believe it. Like I had never thought that I would write a book, not in my wildest dreams, you know.
Mm-hmm.
um, it came to me when I went to a psychic um, in on Vancouver Island a while back. That was like when I first landed here, like in 2008, I think it was. And just for the heck of it, I went to the psychic, and she was like, very quickly into the session, she's like, "Have you written your book?" I'm like, "No, what book?" And she even gave me the title. She said, "It's going to be called The Voice of an Angel." I was like, "Wow, that sounds," to me it was like quite angelic. And at that time I was like, you know, still searching, you know, I had no idea that I was even going to be stepping into my own spirituality, if you will, right? And then fast forward almost 12 years, I think, later, after all of my Draco exploration and all of that, Yeshua finally made his appearance, and he was like, "Yep, this is it. We are supposed to write this book together." And it did take a while. Like the first book, I had already written with the collective of three at that point, and so I sort of, yeah, we wrote like perhaps half the book before the first book, and then we came back a few years later and we finished it in I think it was 2023
Mm.
or end of 2022, beginning of 2023. But yeah, it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I bet. I bet you were just like vibrating the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's quite amazing, because when you think about my own background and what I come from, and how that resistance was within me, and now it's like all of that has just fallen away, and I'm like completely embracing all of the changes that have come about in my life, and how these beings have very gently guided me on this path that I'm on right now. And it's been so beautiful. It's just been so magnificent, and things have just sort of fallen into place in its perfection. And even meeting you, right? How is that possible, right? We just met in a chat room, and it's like, wow, there's so much we have in common, and it's truly amazing how these things just happen.
Hmm. Yeah, I was so grateful to meet you and know you're in Canada. You're in BC as well. So that feels really good to me, because I feel like maybe it's not the ripe time yet, but I do feel in terms of like good work, because that's sort of the channel that we met through.
Yes.
I feel like Canada needs some attention on that level. So,
Yeah, I totally agree. And we had a very lengthy conversation about that. And there's so much that we need to draw from that. And yeah, I feel we should get together and do something as far as Canada is concerned, and expose a lot of the underbelly, if you will, that's been happening here, right? And the atrocities as far as um, sex trafficking. And I know that you mentioned in your area that seems to be predominant. And so, yeah, I look forward to making a plan with you and how we go about doing that.
mhm.
But you said it also sort of was rooted in Saskatchewan and where you originally came from, right?
Yeah, in terms of the sex trafficking, like I can't say for sure. I haven't scanned or actually, I just like I'm aware of like there's an energy in that perverted, inverted, that's happening in the nearest city to us. I don't even know if I feel comfortable naming it, right now, and that's maybe why I've wanted to reach out to you and just have support in doing that mission. Um, there's something in the underbelly for sure, and it is feels related to children.
Hmm.
But the Saskatchewan mission is for me a lot about restoring the organic to the soil regeneration, rejuvenation, and clearing the pattern of toxicity. Um, and just bringing back the beauty, the organic beauty to those lands of the prairies and healing that. Because I feel like because it's so toxic, the farming industry, I feel like it's keeping people kind of stuck and trapped in, again, that frequency band of like, I don't know, just like complacency and Groundhog Day kind of, existence. And just to restore the creation codes and the creativity codes there and do some like violet flame purification. And yeah, there's just so much we could do there. I mean, it extends then into the culture of like that kind of like culture of like drinking and hockey. Now, there's nothing wrong with hockey in and of itself necessarily. I enjoy sports, but like that being such a predominant part of the culture, like that just doesn't feel life giving, or it doesn't feel expanding and co creative to me. So just bringing greater balance to what life could be like and the possibilities for these small communities that are really, struggling and kind of dying off. And yeah, just restore the light to these places so that people start to really feel their power for as creator beings to co-create heaven on earth there, and to lift the fear of shifting from the big industry mindset, um, and the manipulation that took place that infiltrated the consciousness of the farmers in those communities. So in that way, like, there's compassion because they were fooled, right? They were tricked and manipulated, and that this would be a good thing to spray chemicals and desiccate crops and stuff like that. But it infiltrates to the poison to affect and create toxicity and poison the entire population, because a lot of the world's grains and legumes come from Saskatchewan. So it's a big mission in that regard, because it's the food that we're eating. If people aren't aware of, or don't even have the ability to grow their own food, then this is what people are eating. And there's major issues with glyphosate affecting the solar plexus and the digestive system, which is where we actually can, like, activate and implore our will, where we actually have will and courage to take action that is in alignment with truth, and consciousness. And so it feels like, on a metaphysical level, like a systematic target on the solar plexus, making people feel weakened in their will center. So those are the layers to what I see why a mission would be valuable to do in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. And we'll definitely plan something. Maybe we'll pull in a few of the other sisters to join us, and
Mm.
we'll plan something for sure, for sure. What do you feel would be the best way to sort of um, get into that field of understanding or connecting with the local population, if you will? Because it seems to be like a mindset, right? That's already been established. So what do you feel would be a way that perhaps that they would um, listen or understand or accept that into their being, that this is, a program, if you will, that's been, imposed on the population? Because I know that a lot of things are happening in the U.S. with Kennedy being, nominated now as the health secretary, if you will. So in a way that that's already that elixir, or that the US is already turning that corner, right? But do you feel that that's something that we could use and as an example to perhaps get the Canadians to say, look, this is what's being exposed in the US? Isn't it time that we realize that we have been poisoned as well, and make those authentic choices, and sort of move away from the poisons that we are being fed, right?
Mhm.
What do you feel would be the the best way forward, if you will?
I I really feel just working with the land is the first step, because there isn't any ego resistance. I think I mentioned this to you in our last conversation. Like, the order, in fact, it was Mary Magdalene that started to really nudge me. I've been thinking about this for 20 years, and I've always been a little bit, to be honest, like, afraid to talk about it, because it's where I grew up. I have friends and family, and it's like not about that. It's not about speaking against them or judging any way of life, but it's like it brings tears to my eyes every time I talk about the land. So it really is about the land for me. It's not about judging the people or the communities. And I feel like by focusing on the land, it will help naturally shift the consciousness of the people, um, because it will just naturally guide people or provide moments, little, like, aha moments, or moments of, like, enlightenment, where they have a different connection with, like, a flower that they see, or a butterfly that, the flora and fauna that starts to like show up in that new earth frequency, the garden, the return of the garden frequency, um, is what will like create like little moments where they shift into that 5D consciousness and above, where it's like, and then they question like, oh, I don't want to spray, anymore certain pesticides and stuff, because this is such a new experience to remember what an interaction with a butterfly feels like, to see the beauty return. um, to me is just like what moves souls to want to align with the creation, you know. So for me, it's my main focus is the land and less about the consciousness of the people. And I feel like that's what Mary Magdalene has shown me, what will start to open up the field, open up bodies, hearts, and minds to having deeper conversations around the restructuring, and creating a new dream, like collective dreaming, for those lands that will benefit everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do that. Let's make a plan. So maybe I'll give you some homework. You can maybe just put down a few things and places that we would want to focus on,
Okay.
and then we can make a plan, and we'll get a few sisters and brothers if they want to join us and lend their energy so that we have a balance of divine feminine and masculine energies, and we can plan a breathwork session. But I think you're right. If we make that first attempt of just serving the land, because the earth is definitely needing to heal, and I'm getting that as well on many levels, right? She's healing in this ascension as well, and so there's got to be a way that we can first heal her, and then it's as if by osmosis we heal with her, right?
Yeah, and in a way, I'm feeling like it's a little bit more of her calling us to connect in a reverent way with her. Like she wants our connection, and that the truth is actually it's for our healing.
Mm-hmm.
And because she can in a way she can handle herself, but it's same. It's like one and the same. I've always said like the body and the earth are one and the same. Like
Yeah.
they're exact. So what we do affects the other, but just a little bit of a reframe. It really does feel like a physical healing for people, including ourselves and obviously myself. But that she just wants attention, like that kind of like a different kind of attention placed on her, a different kind of reverence, a different kind of imagining and dreaming for that part of her body that
Mm-hmm.
um, is desiring to reclaim that heaven on earth.
Yeah. Are there a lot of Aboriginal communities in that area?
In that area, not as much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's southern Saskatchewan, more in the northern parts of Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. No, we'll definitely plan something.
Mhm.
I'm feeling called to do that as well. And you're right, not a lot of work has been done in Canada. And so just from me traveling within the little places that I've been to, it's mostly within BC. And I found that Victoria was like a stronghold of very, very dark energy. So it's like wherever I travel, it becomes a grid work mission for me, right? And so I call in all of my guides to help me with this, and they very gladly come in and clear the way. And so, in a way, wherever I've gone, I've been able to clear all of these energies. But there is a lot of underlying stuff that I wasn't able to do on my own in Victoria because of it being such a stronghold. And I have a feeling that this perhaps is in also places like Nelson, because it's sort of out of the way, right? Nobody really goes into these places. And so we need to definitely shine a light on these areas where, the inversions are taking place. And it's almost like they have a place where they can hide, right? But we need to tell them that no, you're not able to hide from us anymore, right? And that's been my mission as well, exposing all of these dark agendas and um, bringing them to the light through my own missions with Yeshua and the higher dimensional beings, and just having them sort of collect, if you will, all of these energies and take them off planet. But the key is that once they do that, it's as if we need to, as if on a boot, with like boots on the ground sort of situation, we need to help the others understand what's taking place so that they can make that shift within themselves. And so by doing these missions, it's like we're coming from it's almost like we're meeting these people or these guides halfway, right? And we are doing that mission, but then that sort of plants a seed, if you will, for that community or that um, energy to be anchored within the field for those changes to take place within the people, and the ones that actually hear those messages. So yeah, it would be exciting to actually do that with you, and we'll make a plan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to shift gears slightly.
Okay. I was just
Let's
looking at the map of Canada and I kind of was getting that there's a connection to the heart chakra because it is central. It's fairly central in the map. So,
Mhm.
and I was really feeling the emotion like it was like hit my heart, like my chest directly. Anyways,
Yeah,
we can shift gears now. Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely we'll make a plan. So Saskatchewan, is you feeling, is the heart center?
Well, yeah, connected at least in the within the range of the heart. It's fairly
Okay.
central, but on the lower half. So I'm not sure. It would be neat to see what everyone feels and senses around that. So
Okay. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about your Mystic Mountain retreat and what you've built there. That's so, it's so beautiful to me when I heard you talk about that and your journey to actually getting to bring that to fruition. So I'd love to hear your story about how that came about. I know you touched a little bit about you meeting Robert and how that came to be, but this to me seems like that was your dream together and how that came to fruition. So yeah, I'd love for our audience to hear that and how that came to be.
sure, yeah. So when we met, just really quickly, we realized very soon that we were on like this parallel path. We just hadn't met yet, but like we were kind of doing trainings and different things and initiations and even just mundane life experiences were all kind of happening on this parallel, timeline. And when we met, we realized that we had a shared vision and dream, which was to create like a healing center or a retreat center. So BC was never really on my radar. I kept looking more like northern Saskatchewan. I knew I wanted to be more in an organic environment with lots of trees and forests and water. But he had always came out this way as a young teenager and throughout his 20s to visit the hot springs. And anyways, he brought me out here on a camping trip, and I could feel, I feel like heaven on earth. Like templating here in the Kootenays. It's so beautiful. It just looks like what that would look like in anyone's imagination. It's just incredible. Granted, there are spots and pockets still under influence that the consciousness isn't fully aligned with what's available to us here in the mountains. But that was it for me. Like I really could feel the desire to want to be out here and so now we are where we are. There's a story of how we got there of course, but and yeah, we're on 13 acres just north of Caslow, about 5 minutes. And part of that land is Back's crown land, and about my guess is about 5 or 6 acres of it is just forest, and then there's sort of open glade and like orchard area in the front of the house and the temple space that we constructed, which is what I'm in right now, last summer, for people to come and camp and stay and learn or experience healing with us. So we do one-on-one sessions. We curate and customize personal retreats for people based on their unique soul signature and need and requirement or goals that they have for their life and their spiritual journey or healing journey. Um, since creating this space, we've had more group gatherings and community gatherings here. And the goal this summer is to have more and more of those group experiences. So one-on-ones and couples are still on an option, but we're really feeling the power and potential and potency of like the group unifying consciousness, group dreaming and envisioning, new earth in a group setting. So we're going to have lots of community probably events. There's a community ascension journey that we're starting in at the spring equinox, and it's 14-week. It'll take us right up to summer solstice. So from spring equinox to summer solstice, it's an ascension journey around the zodiac. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. I feel like the zodiac, if everyone could acquaint themselves with the zodiac, it is an ascent. It will facilitate and help us to ascend out of the time matrix. It's not the cap. We can, accelerate and kind of spin out of that into more of our galactic connections. But, to start there and even doing it really consciously and as a group, the feeling that I have and the idea is that we can shift from the lower octave to the higher octave of our solar system, celestial connections and zodiacal connections, or the connections through the constellations, which involves also chakra activations and integrating the higher chakras with the lower, like the physical chakras. So that's coming up in the spring as an in-person journey. So we're hoping to get, enough people to run that. And then otherwise, like my husband does, he kind of works around. He'll kind of journey out and get invited to do his shamanic work in different areas, like locally. And often he'll make a couple trips out to Alberta and Saskatchewan with his work too, a year. So we're just co-creating and following our creative impulses and like feeling guided and led to do certain things, and we just dive in and stay open to the geometry of the now moment as best as we can, and be navigated in that way to facilitate really harmonizing and unifying experiences, as well as healing and uplifting experiences for people. I would say I'm really passionate about like body temple preparation for ascension. So, or for the full integration of the soul's light into the physical vessel. I'm passionate about that, like really working with the physical body to make it ready for so much light, to be able to hold and carry all that much light. So that's been a passion of mine since about 2011. So I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I went on your website and looked at your beautiful school, and it's so beautiful. Like you said, it's just it looks like something out of this world, right? So it's so wonderful that you found your heaven, if you will, heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's so great to hear that. And just in terms of your one-on-one sessions, what does that look like? I know you have this the one that you just talked about, but that's like different from your one-on-one sessions, correct?
Yeah. I mean, it all kind of ties in. The approach is kind of similar, even in group in-person work, but the one-on-one, I really love to do a little bit longer, more integrated journeys with people to just be a support over a fair trial of time, so that they can really witness and experiment and experience, the different possibilities for them. A lot can happen in just a one-off session, but I'm taking your course right now, the Connecting to Higher Self, and I love that it's an 11-week course, because I just love that kind of work so much. So I can do one-on-ones, which is a great way to like meet with people for the first time. They get to know how I work. I involve a lot of like, belief repatterning. I work a lot on the psycho-emotional level to heal certain limiting, beliefs, clear out certain programs and conditioning, and bring in the self-love and self-compassion pieces, sort of prepares them for the more like mystery school level, ascension work, and understanding the spiritual technology that people have available to them. So there's usually a progression of like that human level healing stuff, and then moving into identifying more with your divinity, as like an angelic being on the planet. And then there's always a part of like embodiment and integration of like follow through and taking action, um, to live that in your life, to have the practice of what would it feel like in that new way of being, where I'm cleared from a lot of the stuff that was holding me back. I'm more integrated in my spirituality and my spirit and my higher self connection. And then, so how do I interact then in my relationships in the world and my services and offerings? So there's usually a progression somewhat like that in my spiritual mentorship program. Um, but on a healing sense, I have a 13-week program that focuses only on the physical body, but it's super quantum. Like we go in and we do one body system at a time. So the cardiovascular system, and then the nervous system, and then the respiratory system, and it's like universes within the physical body. And the goal there is to align our thoughts with the thoughts of the creator. And so what did God have in mind, when creating this physical vessel? And what are the spiritual connections and functions? What is the divine function of these systems that serves and supports our ascension process? And so many practical things come through, physical healings, detoxification. I really work a lot with clearing poisons. I seem to have a mission regarding the specific issue of poisons. So I'm passionate about that, and like parasites and entity removal and stuff like that just kind of happens where it needs to, depending on the person. But codes come through, and geometries, and spiritual guidance and soul level guidance as we explore the biology of the body, as well. So as a technology too. So it's really fun.
That's
That's my
awesome.
favorite journey.
Yeah, it sounds pretty extensive. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to delve into that. Yeah, if you don't mind just giving me your feedback and what you feel about module 1 that you've done so far in my course of connecting to the higher self.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the organization and the layout, everything from like, signing up to the opening ceremony, to your short introductions and laying out, what to expect, and then going into the module was so beautiful. Just it felt really clear, like the channel was really clear. Um, and that in and of itself is just activating, because you somehow magically were able to create a sacred space through the online, experience of just receiving these videos and listening to your voice. Your voice is so lovely for the body. The frequency feels really good just hearing your voice and how you guide the meditations. So on so many levels, I was just really receiving your offering. And so getting into the material, though, I I really love the guided meditation. The first module was on connecting with sort of that base, the origin of creation and matter, and how we came to be as a man, like what the creation of man, and kind of following the thought, if you will, of the creator, and the progression of how that happened through first, mind, and then frequency, and then sound, and then light, and then form. So it's just beautiful. I can feel the progression, which makes me excited for the next module. It felt really amazing to have a focal point for my week, and kind of something to reflect on throughout, the week, and connect to. And just life can get busy. And so having this commitment weekly feels very grounding as well, and very supportive to like keeping my connection to spirit really strong, so that I don't get distracted and I can always come back to center. So I appreciated that about it. And Yeah, it was just a beautiful, my body felt relaxed. My consciousness felt expanded and more open. And I haven't got fully into the journaling yet, the journal reflections, and I was going to repeat the process and the exercises again, but I just couldn't. Yesterday was a weird day. I don't know if you felt that in the energy field, but it felt really off for me. So I want to do that again today, but I appreciated the practice of what does it feel like to connect to your higher self. You know, just the first initiating, like that command of I connect with my higher self. That is so simple but so powerful and so profound, and it just sets the foundation, I imagine, for the rest of the journey. So I'm really grateful, Raquel. I'm enjoying it so far. I have great feedback, and I just can't wait to keep going deeper and deeper.
That's awesome. Thank you for that testimony. It sort of was birthed, if you will, from the first book that I wrote with the collective of three. It's called All That Is, Progressing to the Fifth Dimension. And so it does take you through that creation story, and it progresses along the way, and it sort of culminates into where we are right now, right? And it takes you through that whole Draco invasion, if you will, which is from the perspective of the collective of three, and how we are in the situation we are at right now. But it also gives you that ability to align yourself authentically with your higher self. And so the course is sort of focused on that, and getting that sort of concrete connection, if you will, to your higher self energies that we were in a way disconnected from, right? If not disconnected, fragmented, right? Over the last so many years. And I'm finding that in my own reality, like there's been a disconnection for myself, and so getting back on track and realigning with that energy was very powerful for me. And so this is a way of me sharing that with whoever wishes to come on board and explore that for themselves in a very powerful way. And then you've got all of these other um, layers, if you will, that sort of culminate in terms of aligning with what society has been, and with the Draco invasion, and your own spirituality, and what spirituality means from a societal perspective. And so there's many different layers that all sort of come together, but it comes together in a very cohesive, sort of beautiful way. And there is a progression to how you gain that as you progress through this 11 module course. And so the next one coming up for you is the energy body. And so I'll be sending that to you shortly. So I hope you enjoy it. But I tried to, so they came to me as sort of a capsule, if you will, or a communication from these beings, right? The collective of three. And so that transmission is hard for me to replicate in, say, if I were to do a workshop in person, right? That original frequency, if you will, that came with that message would be distorted in a way, right? So the message that I have received from these beings is that I need to keep that authentic in that original presentation, if you will.
Okay.
Right? So for me to be able to do a workshop in a personal manner, if you will, it would take away from that capsule of energy that came through in that live transmission, right? So what I try to do is encapsulate that with perhaps meditations or yogic practices that I
And
have
music.
learned.
And music.
Yeah, and music is very important to them because
Very
they talked
beautiful.
about that in their book. So
Hmm.
this is the book. Oh, it's gone back to that original state. But anyway, I'll send the link to you as well. It's called All That Is, Progressing to the Fifth Dimension. And so this is from the perspective of these three beings who call themselves the collective of three. And so one of them is from the 12th dimension, one is an Arcturian, and the other is a Palladian. So they came together as my guides, if you will. And so we've been communicating over the last few years, and that book came to fruition, and they presented this course to me to get that a higher self guidance, if you will. And so me having a background of meditation, and I've done my yoga teachers training, and I think we talked about this in our past conversation. I sort of like Ayurveda, in my life as well. And so I try to bring in all of these little snippets in a way of aligning what I know as well with their teachings. And so we try to create this capsule, if you will, of their teachings and what I had to offer. And so for me, my joy was bringing all of it together, creating that presentation, putting the music to it, presenting it in a way that would be a beautiful experience for people. So I'm so glad to hear your testimony that you've given me that, and I got goosebumps when you were talking about it, because to me it's a reflection of what I had hoped to communicate through those lessons, right? And so that gives me a great sense of accomplishment to hear that it is being received in that way, in the purity that it was meant to be. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm getting full body chills right now too. And what's coming to me is that it's like progressing to the fifth dimension could be ungrounding for some people, but your specific frequency and your tone, like your vibration that comes through your voice, and in a way like the light language of the sounds and the vibrations that come through your guiding meditations is very grounding. So I'm just having this realization or insight now. There was something very like almost like flower essency. Like it felt very soft, yet it was super grounded, as well. And then also very much like elevating and expanding because you're connecting to your higher self and you're like moving up and out in a sense. So there was lots of like elements that if you really break it down, because I have a mind like that, I like to understand the metaphysical science of my experiences and what makes something work and what makes something feel harmonious versus not. And I would say that you as a being is coming through as a frequency and medicine that supports the ascension work so that people can stay grounded and feel like they're still safe in their body on the earth while they do this higher dimensional journey. So thank you for that.
Thank you for saying that, because I think my target audience, if you will, is for the people that are just sort of dipping their toes into this arena, if you will, and are not aware of being severed from this higher self energy, or being fractured, if you will, or damaged from that energy because of what has taken place. So to me, that's like my way of bridging the gap, if you will, for those beings, and giving them that forum to explore what it truly means to step into your alignment with the higher self energies and embrace that energy, right? Leaving aside all belief systems, all past lifetimes, if you will, or even this lifetime, and what society has guided us to believe, right? So it's a way of like coming into that purity of just your own sovereign energy and what's speaking to you from your heart, and engaging from that level, right? So you're coming at it from that pure sort of connection to the higher self and to the creator, and then just exploring from that perspective and where that takes you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how it was for me, and how I've managed to leave aside all of those belief systems and all of the things from my past, and embrace this path completely.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious. Like I'm excited to move through the 11 weeks and just see how things feel in the end because I work a lot with belief systems and I feel like this process could be not in a bad way, but like bypass the nitty-gritty of like unraveling all of the threads of those belief constructs and just kind of get to the point of transcending them through this process of higher self integration. I mean, I've experienced that on my own, but it's really given me something to think about. It's very welcoming, it's very nurturing, accessible yet powerful. That's how I would summarize
What
my
was your experience with your higher self before perhaps the course? I know that you've had powerful connection to your higher self, but are you able to sort of differentiate, if you will, between the two experiences? Or
Yeah.
was it in alignment with your previous experience?
Well, like the exercise was different and unique to like focus that energy in my left hand and see and ask my higher self for those clear yeses or nos, just get developing that tool better. I'll probably use that now. Um, but I call in my higher self every day. And my process of doing that is waiting for that physical response in my body that it's kind of landed and integrated or interfaced, with this physical vessel. And it is a sensation that I feel when I'm more embodied, by that. Um, so that's been my process for me to, and I feel like the more you do that as a practice, you just start to feel that embodiment, like your angelic embodiment
Yeah,
more.
it's an expansive feeling, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's quite beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing it with me.
You're welcome. Yeah, I really look forward to you continuing with the course, and we'll perhaps touch back and after you've done a few more modules and see how you feel about it. And yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback once you've progressed as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to share. And if there's anything that I've spoken to today that you'd like to experience or try, let me know as well, and we
Thank
can
you.
do an
That's
exchange.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Appreciate it. Was there anything else, Shekinah, that you wanted to talk to the audience about? And yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch base with the audience and sort of say, I encourage you to love, like, and share this video. I'm having the greatest time ever with this being that I've just got to know. So yeah, share this video. There's so many layers to it. I'm definitely going to listen to it again and just absorb everything that has happened here. It's just so fulfilling to meet people like you, on this journey that we're all on. So it's very illuminating and very expansive in my heart to have this experience with you. So thank you for sharing your space with me and for the time that you've dedicated to come on this show. So thank you.
Likewise. Yeah, I feel so grateful as well. I'm so grateful for this connection. Yeah.
Was there anything that we haven't touched on that you wish to communicate or add to this conversation?
I don't think so. I had some thoughts before we even hopped on the call, but it's on a different topic. So perhaps I could share that with you behind the scenes, and maybe we could do a different. It would be a whole another show. So I won't mention it here, but I think that feels complete and cohesive to me. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm so grateful to be here and have this conversation and share it with all of you. So thank you, Shekinah, once again for being here. And I'm really sure that we will cross paths more often and share some more of our common journey together with whether it's in this forum or with just between ourselves. So thank you for being on the show. Have a great day, everybody. Namaste.
Bye. Namaste.